Let's say you're the most powerful man in the country. You have armies, you have spies, and you have people whose entire job is to think about how you might die. One day, a doctor looks you in the eye and says, "To cure you, I need to open your skull." Not metaphorically, not let's talk about your feelings. He means surgery. And here's the twist. That doctor, Hua Tuo, might be the only person alive who can actually save you. So, you do what any calm, reasonable, definitely not paranoid ruler would do. You have him arrested. This story takes place at the end of the Han Dynasty, Donghan Monian, around the late 2nd century. By this point, the Han imperial court is collapsing from the inside. Corruption, famine, and rebellion have hollowed out the central government, and real power has shifted away from the emperor into the hands of regional strongmen. One of the sparks for this breakdown was the Yellow Turban Rebellion of 184 AD, a massive uprising that forced the court to rely on local generals to restore order. Now, those generals never fully gave that power back. China became a fractured map of warlords, each controlling territory with private armies. And among them, the sharpest, most dangerous warlord of them all was Cao Cao. Cao Cao was brilliant and decisive, the kind of man who could see 3 moves ahead. But he was also the kind of man who couldn't fully relax, even when he was alone. When you rise the way he did, you learn something quickly. Power doesn't just bring enemies, it creates them. So Cao Cao lived in a permanent state of readiness, always listening for the hidden blade, which is why it's almost poetic that the thing that starts to destroy him isn't an army or even an assassin, but something small, private, and invisible. A pain behind his eyes. A headache so severe it can stop him mid-sentence, and one that keeps coming back again and again. Imagine being Cao Cao, surrounded by generals and advisors, trying to project absolute control. And then your vision narrows. Your temples begin to throb. Bright lights hurt. The sound of your own palace, footsteps, silk, metal, turn into a hammer striking your skull. He couldn't afford any weakness, so he did what powerful men always do when their bodies betray them. He summoned the best. And the best at that time was a name people whispered like a myth, Hua Tuo, the so-called divine physician. This was the man associated with acupuncture, with herbs, and with abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Stories followed him wherever he went. They said Hua Tuo could diagnose illness just by looking at a person or by feeling the pulse once and saying exactly where the problem was hiding inside the body. Some accounts claim he could predict how a disease would progress days or even weeks in advance. When Hua Tuo arrived at Cao Cao's court, he didn't act like someone meeting a god. There was no trembling, no flattery, no performance. Just a doctor looking at a patient. He examined Cao Cao carefully, watching his posture, his breathing, the tension in his jaw. He listened in silence longer than most people would dare. And then he began to ask questions, not about politics or enemies, but about sleep, about when the pain started, about whether it came with dizziness, nausea, or flashes of light. He asked what Cao Cao ate, how often he rested, whether the pain worsened after anger or stress. He even asked about bowel movements and dreams about exhaustion. These weren't the kinds of questions courtiers asked a ruler. They were intimate, almost invasive, the sort of questions a powerful man wasn't used to answering. And as Hua Tuo asked them calmly, without fear or apology, it felt less like an audience with a warlord and more like an interrogation of the body itself. Then he treated him. Needles placed with calm precision, bitter herbal mixtures, a disciplined regimen. At first, it worked. The pain eased. Cao Cao started to think, maybe this is over. Maybe my headaches are gone. But there's something about men like Cao Cao. When something works too well, they start asking why. And why is where paranoia lives. After multiple treatments, Hua Tuo finally gave Cao Cao the kind of news powerful men hate to hear. This wasn't just a headache, it was deeper, something lodged inside, something the needles and herbs could calm, but not remove. If Cao Cao wanted a real cure, Hua Tuo explained, there was only one option. He would need to perform an operation. He would need to cut, not the arm, not the leg, the head. Now, in modern terms, it sounds like a neosurgeon speaking plainly. But to Cao Cao, it sounded very different. You want me to let you put a blade near my brain. Now, in Cao Cao's world, blades near heads were political, not medical. From that moment on, Cao Cao watched Hua Tuo the way he watched everyone else. Not for what he said, but for what he might be hiding. Hua Tuo tried to explain further. He mentioned an anesthetic called ma fei san, described in later sources as an oral herbal sedative, capable of dropping a patient into a deep, unresisting sleep. The kind of sleep where a body could be opened. The kind of sleep where a person could not fight back. The terrifying part is that the exact recipe was never preserved. So even the name, hinting at hemp and boiling powder, reaches us like some sort of half-buried treasure. Hua Tuo believed this would reassure his patient. But in Cao Cao's mind, the story flipped. To a paranoid ruler, anesthesia wasn't comfort, it was vulnerability. It was helplessness. It was being surrounded by people with knives while your eyes were closed. Suddenly, the headache was no longer the greatest danger in the room. The doctor was. Not long after this conversation, Hua Tuo asked to leave. He wanted to go home. He mentioned family matters, other obligations, exhaustion. Through Cao Cao's eyes, the timing was perfect in the worst possible way. A doctor proposes a blade to the head procedure and then asks to disappear. It didn't feel like a normal request. It felt like a setup, like buying time, like meeting someone, like the surgery wasn't medicine at all, but an assassination plan with a clear explanation. When Cao Cao believed that, even a little, the outcome became almost inevitable. Cao Cao ordered Hua Tuo arrested. There was no debate, no second opinion, no careful investigation. This wasn't a medical decision in Cao Cao's mind. It was a security decision. Hua Tuo was thrown into prison. There, he tried desperately to preserve what he knew, writing and compiling his methods, sometimes linked to a book called Qingnang Shu, a blue pouch of medicine that might have changed history. But prison doesn't protect knowledge. It erases it. Pages were lost, burned, and discarded. And eventually, the man himself was erased. Hua Tuo was executed, one of the greatest healers of the age, killed by the very person he tried to save. After Hua Tuo was gone, the palace didn't get safer. It got quieter. And the headache returned. At first it was familiar, then it became pressure, and then it became a storm. Cao Cao summoned other doctors and tried other prescriptions, but the only person who could calm the pain, maybe even cure it, was already dead. He wasn't punished by an enemy or defeated in battle. He was trapped inside his own suspicion, a man powerful enough to command everything except trust. Now, there are different versions of this story, and some details were later dramatized in the book Sangguo Yanyi, but the core never changes. A brilliant ruler meets a brilliant doctor, and the ruler cannot accept that help can be real. Because if help is real, then vulnerability is real. And if vulnerability is real, then anyone could end him. So he chooses control. He chooses fear. He killed the cure. And in the end, he did not escape the illness. In the winter of 220 AD, Cao Cao was in Luoyang, the old Han capital he effectively controlled, surrounded by physicians, attendants, and generals who could do nothing but watch. The headaches that had followed him for years returned with full force, violent, relentless, impossible to ignore. Records describe a ruler weakened, bedridden, no longer commanding from horseback or council hall, but from within his residence. There was no dramatic final battle, no assassination, no last clever maneuver. Cao Cao died quietly in his room, inside a failing body, undone by the same illness once believed could be cut away. The pain he had feared, the vulnerability he could not accept, was the one enemy he never defeated. If you want more stories from Chinese history, let me know which figure you want to hear about next in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become a member of Learn Chinese Now by clicking join below. And until next time, 再见! If you enjoy the deeper meaning behind Chinese culture, folklore, legends, and strange true stories, then come explore more with me on Jared Tells Tales, where mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly still live on. Click the link to watch your first tale.